Welcome back to another episode of the Everyday English Learning Podcast. I am your host, Jake, and it is truly a pleasure to be spending this time with all of you today.
And I am Lily. We're so glad you could join us. I have been looking forward to this specific episode all week because I think we are touching on something that everyone, regardless of where they live or what they do, experiences on a very deep level.
You are absolutely right, Lily. Today we are stepping away from the standard textbook phrases for a moment to talk about something much more personal, our emotions. Specifically, we are going to explore how to express feelings of stress, pressure, and anxiety in English.
It is a topic that is often overlooked in traditional classrooms. We spend so much time learning how to ask for directions or how to order a meal at a restaurant, but when we are actually struggling or feeling the weight of the world on our shoulders, we often find ourselves at a loss for words. We usually just resort to saying, "I'm fine," even when we are definitely not fine.
That is a classic trap, isn't it? The "I'm fine" trap. But the truth is, being able to accurately describe your emotional state is a key part of becoming fluent. It allows you to build deeper connections with friends, colleagues, and even yourself. It is about moving beyond basic communication and into the realm of real human connection.
Exactly. And today, we want to give our listeners the vocabulary and the confidence to say exactly what they're going through, whether you are dealing with a heavy workload, a difficult exam, or just a hectic day. Knowing how to voice those feelings can make a world of difference.
So, throughout this episode, we will be breaking down specific phrases, looking at the nuances between different words, and practicing how to use them in real life scenarios. We want this to be a safe space for you to learn how to be vulnerable and authentic in your second language.
We have a lot of ground to cover, from the everyday stress to more intense feelings like being overwhelmed. So grab a cup of tea, find a comfortable spot, and let's get started.
This is going to be a very helpful session for anyone who has ever felt a bit of pressure and didn't know how to let it out. Let's dive into the world of emotions together. You know, Lily, I was actually reflecting on this topic because of how I felt just yesterday afternoon. I was sitting at my desk, the blue light from my monitor feeling a bit too bright, and I was staring at an inbox that simply would not stop growing. I had a major project deadline looming at 5 p.m., and every time I managed to archive one email, three more would pop up. I could feel this physical knot forming in my stomach and a tightness in my shoulders that wouldn't go away. I realized in that moment that I wasn't just busy, I was truly deeply stressed.
I can almost feel that tension just listening to you describe it, Jake. I think we have all had those days where the clock seems to be ticking twice as fast as it should. For me, that feeling usually hits when I am trying to juggle too many different roles at once. Just last week, I was trying to finalize a presentation for work while simultaneously coordinating a family event and dealing with a sudden leak in my kitchen. It felt like my brain had 50 different tabs open at the same time and the system was starting to crash. I remember sitting down on my floor for a second and thinking, I am completely overwhelmed right now.
That word you used, overwhelmed, is so significant. It carries a much heavier weight than just saying you have a lot to do, doesn't it? It describes that specific sensation where the water is rising above your head and you are no longer sure if you can keep treading water.
Exactly. Being busy is about your schedule, but being overwhelmed is about your capacity to cope. It is an emotional state. When I reached that point, I realized that I couldn't just work harder to get out of it. I needed to pause, and more importantly, I needed to express that feeling to the people around me so they could understand why I was struggling. But for many English learners, finding that specific word in the heat of the moment is the hardest part.
I want to invite our listeners to join us in this reflection for a moment. Try to go back to a time recently, maybe it was yesterday, or perhaps it was a few weeks ago, when you felt that same pressure. Perhaps you were at university facing a mountain of assignments, or you were at home trying to manage a household while feeling exhausted. Can you recall the physical sensation, the mental fog?
Think about what you said to yourself in that moment. Did you have the English words to describe it accurately? Most of us are taught to say, I am tired or I am busy, but as we've discussed, those phrases don't quite capture the truth of the experience. If you were talking to a close friend or a supportive manager, would you have been able to tell them that you were feeling stressed or overwhelmed?
It is a vital bridge to cross. We have to move from just feeling the emotion to naming it. When I was at my desk yesterday, I finally turned to my colleague and said, I'm sorry, I'm just feeling a bit stressed with this deadline, so I might be a little slow to respond. Just saying it out loud seemed to release some of the pressure. It made the situation manageable again.
There's immense power in naming your emotions. It shifts you from being a victim of the feeling to being an observer of it. So, as we move forward, keep that specific memory of your own stress in your mind. We are going to give you the precise tools to describe it so the next time the world feels a bit too heavy, you can voice it clearly and confidently.
It's all about finding the right fit for the feeling, because a stressed person needs something different than an anxious person. Let's start looking at how to make those distinctions. Now that we have set the stage and shared our own experiences, let's get into the specific language tools you can use to express these complex emotions. The most common phrase, and a great starting point for any English learner, is I'm feeling stressed. It is simple, direct, and everyone understands what it means. However, the word stressed is like an umbrella. It covers a lot of different feelings.
That is very true, Jake. While stressed is a great general term, sometimes we need to be more precise to help others understand the exact nature of our struggle. As I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite or perhaps most used words is overwhelmed. You can say, I'm overwhelmed, or more specifically, I'm overwhelmed with work this week. This word specifically describes the feeling that the amount of work or responsibility you have is simply too much to handle. It's the sensation of being buried under a mountain of tasks.
I like that you pointed out the structure overwhelmed with. Using those prepositions correctly makes your English sound much more natural. Another nuance we should explore is the difference between being stressed and being anxious. While stress is often a reaction to an external pressure, like a deadline or a difficult boss, anxiety is often more about internal worry or fear regarding the future.
That is an important distinction to make. For instance, you might say, I feel anxious before presentations. Here, it's not necessarily that the workload is too high, but that the anticipation of the event is causing your heart to race or your mind to spin. Anxiety is that feeling of what if? What if I fail? What if I forget my words? Recognizing that you are anxious rather than just stressed can help you find better ways to calm down, like practicing your speech or doing some deep breathing.
Exactly. And for those times when the pressure has been going on for a very long time, we use a term that has become very common in modern workplaces, burned out. To say I'm burned out means that your candle has literally run out of wax. You have nothing left to give because you've been stressed for weeks or months without a break. It's a deeper level of exhaustion that affects your body and your spirit.
It's a very heavy phrase, but a necessary one. If overwhelmed is about the quantity of work, burned out is about the duration of the struggle. Now let's look at a phrase that is very useful in a professional setting, under pressure. You might tell a colleague, I'm under a lot of pressure to finish this report by Friday. It acknowledges the external demands being placed on you without necessarily admitting that you're losing control. It sounds professional and focused.
That is a great tip, Lily. Under pressure focuses on the situation, while I am stressed focuses on your personal reaction. Now, once you've identified these feelings, the most important next step is communicating what you need. A very simple but powerful phrase is, I need a break. It's a clear statement of a boundary.
I agree. Sometimes we feel we have to explain ourselves with a long paragraph, but simply saying, I need a break or I need to step away for a few minutes is incredibly effective. It tells the other person that you have reached your limit and you are taking responsibility for your well being. Another variation could be, I need a moment to clear my head. This is particularly useful during a heated discussion or a very intense study session.
Exactly. And for those times when the pressure has been going on for a very long time, we use a term that has become very common in modern workplaces, burned out. To say I'm burned out means that your candle has literally run out of wax. You have nothing left to give because you've been stressed for weeks or months without a break. It's a deeper level of exhaustion that affects your body and your spirit.
It's a very heavy phrase, but a necessary one. If overwhelmed is about the quantity of work, burned out is about the duration of the struggle. Now let's look at a phrase that is very useful in a professional setting: under pressure. You might tell a colleague, I'm under a lot of pressure to finish this report by Friday. It acknowledges the external demands being placed on you without necessarily admitting that you're losing control. It sounds professional and focused.
That is a great tip, Lily. Under pressure focuses on the situation, while I am stressed focuses on your personal reaction. Now, once you've identified these feelings, the most important next step is communicating what you need. A very simple but powerful phrase is, I need a break. It's a clear statement of a boundary.
I agree. Sometimes we feel we have to explain ourselves with a long paragraph, but simply saying, I need a break or I need to step away for a few minutes is incredibly effective. It tells the other person that you have reached your limit and you are taking responsibility for your well being. Another variation could be, I need a moment to clear my head. This is particularly useful during a heated discussion or a very intense study session.
We have covered a lot of ground here: stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, burned out, under pressure, and needing a break. These are the building blocks of emotional intelligence in English. But as we always say, knowing the words is only half the battle. You have to practice saying them so they feel natural when you actually need them.
That's right. Let's take a moment to practice these together. I want our listeners to actually say these words out loud, wherever you are. Don't worry about who is listening. Feel the shape of the words in your mouth. Let's start with the most common one. Jake, do you want to lead?
Let's do it. Repeat after me. I'm feeling stressed.
Now, let's try the one for when things are too much. I'm overwhelmed.
And the one for those nervous moments. I'm anxious.
And finally, the most important request for your mental health. I need a break.
Well done. I hope you can feel the difference in the energy of each of those phrases. Stressed feels tight, overwhelmed feels heavy, anxious feels fast, and I need a break feels like a release.
It really does. Remember, you don't have to wait until you're at a breaking point to use these. Using them early when you first start to feel the pressure can prevent you from reaching that state of being completely burned out. It's about being proactive with your communication.
We have spent some time on the what and the how, but next we want to show you how these phrases look in a real conversation. It's one thing to say them to a mirror, but it's another thing entirely to use them with another person. Now we're moving into what I think is the most important part of our episode today: dialogue practice. It's one thing to understand a word's definition, but it's another thing entirely to hear how it breathes and lives in a real conversation. Lily, I was wondering if you could share a more detailed story of a time when you had to use these phrases to navigate a difficult situation.
I would be happy to. About a month ago, I was assigned to lead a marketing campaign that had a very tight turnaround. Initially, I thought I could handle it all by myself, but as the days went by, the tasks started piling up: emails, graphic design approvals, meetings, and data analysis. I remember sitting in my office late on a Tuesday evening, feeling my heart racing. I realized I couldn't just keep saying, I'm fine, to my manager. So the next morning, I walked into his office, took a deep breath, and said, Mark, I need to be honest. I'm feeling completely overwhelmed with this project's timeline.
That is such a powerful move. I think many people are afraid that saying I'm overwhelmed makes them look weak or incompetent. How did your manager react when you used those specific words?
That's the interesting part, Jake. He didn't look disappointed at all. In fact, he looked relieved that I had spoken up. He told me, Lily, I'm glad you said something. I didn't realize how much was on your plate. Because I used the word overwhelmed instead of just saying I'm busy, he understood that it wasn't just about the work. It was about my capacity to handle it at that moment. We were then able to sit down and redistribute some of my tasks to other team members. It changed everything.
That is a perfect example of how the right vocabulary leads to the right solution. If you had just said, I'm busy, he might have just said, well, we're all busy. But overwhelmed signals a different level of need. Now, let's try a different scenario. Let's imagine I'm a friend of yours and we're meeting for coffee after a long week. You've been working nonstop and I can see you're exhausted. I'll start. Hey Lily, it's so good to see you. You look a bit tired though. How has your week been?
Oh, Jake, honestly, it's been a lot. I've been under so much pressure at the office lately that I feel like I haven't had a second to breathe. I think I'm starting to feel a bit burned out.
I'm so sorry to hear that. It sounds like you've been pushing yourself way too hard. What can I do to help?
Just listening helps a lot, but I think what I really need is to just disconnect this weekend. I've realized that I need a break from everything: emails, social media, even thinking about work. I need a moment to clear my head.
That sounds like a very healthy plan. You definitely deserve that time for yourself.
See how that works? In that short exchange, we used under pressure, burned out, need a break, and clear my head. It paints a very clear picture of my emotional state, and it allows Jake, as a friend, to offer the right kind of support.
Exactly. Now, I want to address something else. We talked about anxious earlier. I often feel this way before I have to speak at a conference. Before I go on stage, my hands get cold and I start overthinking my opening lines. I've learned that if I tell my co host, I'm feeling quite anxious right now, it actually helps lower my stress.
Why do you think that is, Jake?
I think it's because when I keep the anxiety inside, it grows. But when I label it, I am feeling anxious, it becomes something outside of me that I can manage. It's like I'm telling my brain, I see what you're doing and it's okay.
I love that. It's okay not to be okay. That is a phrase we should all remember. Now, for our listeners, we want you to participate in this practice with us. We are going to create a situation, and we want you to think about how you would respond using the phrases we've learned today.
Imagine you are a student and you have 3 final exams coming up next week. You haven't had enough sleep and you still have hundreds of pages to read. A classmate asks you, hey, do you want to go out for a movie tonight? What would you say?
Think about it for a second. You could say, I can't, I'm busy, but let's try to be more descriptive. You might say, I'd love to, but I'm feeling really stressed about my exams next week. I'm actually quite overwhelmed with the amount of reading I still have to do.
Or if you're feeling the physical effects, you could say, I'm feeling a bit anxious about the finals, so I think I need to stay home and focus. I really need to clear my head before I can even think about a movie.
Let's try one more. You're at work and your boss just handed you another task, even though you're already working on 3 other things. How do you respond professionally?
You might try this. Thank you for the assignment. However, I have to be honest. I'm currently under a lot of pressure with the existing projects. I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, and I'm concerned that adding more might affect the quality of my work. Could we discuss the priorities?
That is such a sophisticated way to communicate. It uses the vocabulary to set a boundary while remaining helpful and professional. It shows that you are in control of your emotions and your workload.
We hope these examples show you that English isn't just about grammar. It's about survival and thriving in your environment. It's about giving yourself a voice when things get tough.
We want you to keep practicing these out loud. The next time you feel a tiny bit of stress, don't wait until it becomes a huge problem. Practice saying, I'm feeling a bit stressed today. Get comfortable with the sounds and the feelings of these words.
Practice makes progress, not perfection. And speaking of progress, let's talk about how you can take these phrases and apply them to even more situations in your daily life.
It is fascinating how these words we have been discussing today, stressed, overwhelmed, anxious, start to take on a life of their own once you step out of the classroom and into the real world. We often talk about these terms in the context of a job or a school project, but the truth is, the application of this vocabulary is much broader. Stress doesn't just stay at the office, it follows us home, it affects our relationships, and it impacts our health.
You are so right, Jake. I think we need to look at how these phrases function in our personal lives as well. For example, think about the mental load that so many people carry. It's that invisible list of things you have to remember: paying the bills, grocery shopping, checking in on an elderly parent, or making sure the kids have their homework done. Sometimes a person might not be busy, in the traditional sense of having a 9 to 5 job, but they are absolutely overwhelmed by the sheer number of small responsibilities.
That is a very important point. In those domestic situations, being able to say to a partner or a family member, I am feeling overwhelmed with everything I have to manage at home right now, can be the key to preventing a major argument. It shifts the conversation from a place of blame, you aren't helping me, to a place of vulnerability, I am struggling. It allows the other person to see the weight you are carrying.
Exactly. And let's talk about the phrase burned out again, because I think it is being used more than ever. In our modern world, we're constantly on. We have notifications buzzing in our pockets, emails arriving at midnight, and the pressure to always be productive. This constant state of being under pressure leads to a very specific kind of exhaustion. When you say, I'm burned out, you are signaling that you've reached a point where you can no longer function effectively. It is a serious state that requires more than just a quick nap. It requires a real change in lifestyle or pace.
It's a warning light on the dashboard of your life. And unfortunately, many people ignore that light until the engine completely stops. I've noticed that in many cultures, there is still a bit of a stigma around admitting you are anxious or burned out. People feel they have to be tough. But in English-speaking environments, especially in recent years, there has been a massive shift toward prioritizing mental health. Being able to use this vocabulary isn't just a linguistic skill, it is a tool for self-advocacy.
I love that term, self-advocacy. It means speaking up for your own needs. If you are a student and you tell your professor, I'm feeling very anxious about this exam because I've been struggling with the material, you aren't making excuses. You are providing context. Most professors would rather hear that early on so they can offer resources or extra help, rather than seeing a student fail because they were too afraid to speak up.
It also applies to our physical health. There is a strong link between feeling stressed and physical symptoms like headaches or insomnia. Sometimes when we tell a doctor, I've been under a lot of pressure lately, it gives them a vital clue about what might be causing our physical pain. The language of emotion and the language of the body are deeply connected.
I want our listeners to really think about their own lives for a moment. Where is the stress coming from for you right now? Is it the pressure of learning a new language? Is it a difficult relationship? Or maybe it's the general uncertainty of the future. Whatever it is, I want you to know that your feelings are valid, and having the words to describe them is the first step towards managing them.
We would truly love to hear from you. If you feel comfortable, try to write down one sentence using the phrases we learned today that describes how you have been feeling lately. You don't have to share it with anyone if you don't want to, but just writing it down, I am feeling a bit overwhelmed this week, can be a very therapeutic exercise. If you do want to share, we would be honored to hear your stories and how you are using English to navigate your own emotional landscape.
Remember, every time you use one of these phrases, you are practicing more than just English. You are practicing honesty. You are practicing being human in a second language. And that is one of the most beautiful things a learner can do.
It's about building a bridge between your inner world and the people around you. So don't be afraid of these heavy words. Use them as tools to build a better, more supported life for yourself. We have traveled quite a distance in today's conversation, haven't we? From identifying that initial knot of tension in our stomachs to learning how to professionally ask for a redistribution of work. Before we wrap things up, I think it is vital that we take a moment to pause and consolidate everything we have covered. It's a lot of information, and summarizing it helps move it from your short-term memory into your long-term toolkit.
I completely agree. Repetition is the mother of all learning, especially when it comes to language that involves our emotions. Let's look at our stress toolkit one more time. The most important thing to remember is that you have options. You aren't stuck with just saying, I'm stressed.
Exactly. Let's categorize them briefly for our listeners. If you were talking about a general feeling of tension, stick with, I'm feeling stressed. If you feel like the amount of work is literally burying you and you can't keep up, the word you want is overwhelmed. Remember Lily's example, I'm overwhelmed with work this week. It's about volume and capacity.
And then we have those feelings that are more about the what if.
If you are worried about a future event like a test or a meeting, use I'm anxious. If the pressure has been going on for so long that you feel you have absolutely nothing left to give, that is when you use I'm burned out. This distinction is so important because it helps the people around you understand the severity and the duration of what you are going through.
We also discussed the more professional phrasing. I'm under a lot of pressure. This is your go-to phrase for the workplace when you want to stay objective. And finally, the most important part, the solution. Don't be afraid to say, I need a break, or I need a moment to clear my head. These aren't signs of weakness. They are signs of high emotional intelligence and self-awareness.
That is such a crucial takeaway, Jake. We really want to emphasize to all our listeners that learning English, or any language, is about so much more than memorizing a list of words for a test. It is about equipping yourself with the tools to live a full, authentic life in a new language. When you can express your stress, you can manage your stress. When you can communicate your needs, you can get the support you deserve.
It's about the bridge between knowing and doing. You might know these words now, but the real magic happens when you use them in a real conversation. Even if your voice shakes a little bit the first time you say, I'm feeling overwhelmed to a friend, do it anyway. Each time you use these phrases, you are claiming a little bit more of your identity in English.
And remember, you don't have to be perfect. You don't need a perfect accent or perfect grammar to tell someone you need a break. The goal is connection, not perfection. Every small step you take, every new phrase you try out is a victory. Be patient with yourself. Learning to talk about feelings is a journey that takes time, even in our native languages.
So, as you go about your week, I want you to challenge you. Listen to your own internal dialogue. When you feel that pressure rising, ask yourself which word fits this feeling. Is it stress? Is it anxiety? Is it burnout? Just naming it to yourself in English is a fantastic way to practice.
And then, if the situation allows, try saying it out loud. You'll be surprised at how much lighter you feel once the words are out in the open. You are doing a great job, and we are so proud of the progress you are making every single day.
We have reached the end of our journey for today, but honestly, it feels like just the beginning of a much larger conversation. Thank you so much for spending this time with us and for allowing us to be a part of your English learning process. It is a privilege to share these tools with you, and I truly hope that you walk away from this episode feeling a little more confident and a little more prepared to speak your truth in English.
I second that, Jake. It has been such a meaningful episode for me as well. Remember, the goal of this podcast, Everyday English Learning, is to help you navigate the real, messy, and beautiful world outside of the textbook. Emotions are a massive part of that world. Don't be afraid to use these new phrases, and certainly don't be afraid of making mistakes. Every time you speak up about how you feel, you are becoming a more fluent and authentic version of yourself.
Exactly. If you found today's episode helpful, we would be so grateful if you could take a moment to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Sharing this episode with a friend or a colleague who might be feeling a bit under pressure is also a wonderful way to spread the support. We believe that learning is better when we do it together.
We have so many more interesting topics lined up for our future episodes, covering everything from social interactions to professional development. We can't wait to share them with you. So keep practicing, stay curious, and most importantly, remember to be kind to yourself as you learn. You are doing something challenging and impressive, and you deserve to be proud of your efforts.
We will be back soon with more insights and practical tips to help you master the English language one step at a time. Until then, take a deep breath, take that break if you need it, and remember that you have the words to say exactly how you feel.
We look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Don't forget to subscribe and share our podcast to keep learning English every day. Goodbye for now.